Hello everyone, thank you for being here, and today we're going to be talking about Assembly Bill 5, or what they call popularly AB5. And for many of you that are from out of this state that may be watching this video, you may want to pay attention to everything that we're going to be saying, because this law may affect you as well in the future. So what is AB5? Well, AB5 affects independent contractors. And what it does is that it imposes stricter requirements for these individuals. Now, did this law already exist in California? Well, it did sort of in a way, and we're going to be talking about that. Now, is this law new? Well, it isn't. Almost half of the states in the United States have something that's similar to this law. To be more exact, we have 20 states that have already implemented this law. Here in California, we call it the ABC test in one form or another. Certain states are in the process of joining, and this type of law can certainly have a ripple effect in many other states now that it's being imposed in California. So who did this law affect? Well, basically any independent contractor. Now in California, we have something called exemptions. So who are some of these exemptions? Well, we have just a small list here, but we have accountants, dentists, doctors, engineers, hairstylists, insurance agents, lawyers, psychologists, real estate agents, stockbrokers. But if you notice in that list, we don't have interpreters and translators. And this is why we're creating this video. We kind of fell through the cracks when it comes to this law here in California. Now, these individuals that are on this list, it doesn't mean that they are automatically independent contractors. They are still subject to comply with the Borrello test, okay? They are just not mandated to have to comply with what we call here the ABC test. Okay, so I'm talking about this Borrello test, the ABC test. Let's see what these two tests are. So we paid a visit to the Employment Development Department, EDD, here in California, and they had these meetings all across California where they informed everyone about this test. They answered questions, and luckily I went to one of these meetings and there was many interpreters there, so we got to ask a lot of interesting questions. In essence, this is what we call the ABC test. So you are an employee unless you comply with these three tests. What's the first test? The first test is that you are free from control. That means that they can't tell you at what time you start and what time you have to leave and those types of things, right? And then we have the B prong, which says that the worker performs work that is outside the course of the hiring entity's business. And the last one, it states that the worker is engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, or business. Or basically he is his own separate entity, okay? He either is a private corporation or anything of that sort. Let's jump to the Borrello test. So one of the most significant factors to be considered in this test is whether the employer had control or the right to control the worker, right? As to both the work done or the manner or the means in which it was performed. Now that was one of the main factors. It wasn't the only one, but that was the big one. That was the one, you know, that had the red flags. And then they had a bunch of other factors. If we notice, okay, and you'll see them there. I'll let you read that on your own. But we have two factors which Borrello took into consideration. Was whether the person performing the work is engaged in an occupation or business that is distinct from that of the company, right? And whether the work is part of the company's regular course of business, right? AB5, whether we like it or not, is the law. So the question is, what do we do? Are we in favor? Are we against? Are we on the fence? If you are in favor of this law, you must take into consideration that some people are proactively trying to gain an exemption for interpreters and translators in this state. So what do you do if you want to gain an exemption for interpreters and translators? Now remember, it's very important that you understand that interpreters and translators, at least here in California, are not trying to undo the law, but rather they are trying to gain an exemption, just like psychologists have or lawyers have for interpreters and translators. So that's a very important thing for you to take into consideration. I spoke to a lot of interpreter colleagues and friends and asked many of them if they would be willing to actually talk in this video, but there has been a lot of debate in this state and a lot of heat, both for the people in favor or against. One of the main things that many of them mentioned was the loss of autonomy. What do we mean by this? Well, let's say you're an independent contractor and you work for an agency. Most agencies now are hiring full-time interpreters as employees, and that's going to start January 1st. So if you were an interpreter that worked for several agencies and they gave you work continuously, now you lost this work, a lot of the work, because these agencies are hiring full-time staff interpreters. So that's going to reduce the work for many independent contractors. So big one, less work. Another big thing is that this law creates a lot of hurdles for interpreters. Now, many agencies are asking interpreters to create things such as, corporations, obtain business licenses, errors and omissions, insurance, to get business accounts, to show them business cards, etc., etc., etc. So these are all a lot of things that are coming up with this new law, and that we don't really know if it's going to help the agencies in the long run if EDD gets involved. But at least it offers some protections to the agencies. Some important agencies are against this new law and have voiced their opinions on it, one of them being the ATA. And in this statement, you basically see what I just told you a while ago, that few language service providers have sufficient work to hire individual translators and interpreters as employees. So with the current wording of AB5, those companies would have to work with translators or interpreters based outside California, thereby hurting the very people that this bill has proposed to help. And as I told you before, there are some groups that are fighting in favor of the exemption for the interpreters and translators. In this slide, I have one of them, and they are the Coalition of Practicing Translators and Interpreters of California. And for your convenience, I placed the website. So if you are one of those persons that really wants to get involved in this, well, here's a group that you may join. The things I just mentioned are many of the points of view against this law. I think it wouldn't be fair to us to just voice one side of the coin.
Like I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, I had a chance to speak to many people, some in favor, some against. I thought it was fair to voice some of the points of view or some of the opinions or some of the thoughts of the people that are in favor of this law. One of the things that they do mention is that freelancing is not going to disappear, or it's not going to end just because this law was enacted. The work will not disappear. The work will still be there. It'll go into other hands. One thing is that many small agencies will disappear. Many of the agencies say that they'll do whatever they can in-house, and they might let go a lot of the work. And that work will probably go to the hands of independent contractors. Another thing that is mentioned is that there is a lot of fear-mongering going on, and it is caused by the agencies. They do not see this legislation from the interpreter's perspective, rather from their business perspective. This law will probably take a lot of the work from the small agencies and pass them to independent contractors directly. Having direct clients will avoid many little hassles that usually interpreters have to deal with on a daily basis. Like, for example, being micromanaged in the sense that they have to check in, check out with the agencies, having to keep track of the time, whether it's 15-minute intervals, having clients sign forms, having to get errors and omissions insurance, city business licenses, etc., etc. The other thing is that they'll avoid, by having direct clients, having to spend hours on the phone, texting, writing emails, just so they can get paid, whether it's for late cancellations or maybe certain agencies not honoring fees and things of that sort. there are a lot of scams going on and with agencies that hand out work. They pop up everywhere, and they give assignments out and they never pay. So a lot of interpreters are afraid to work for small agencies because it's a lottery. Independent contractors are currently prey to abusive practices by many agencies that treat them like employees but really don't provide any labor benefits. Many interpreters do want to work as independent contractors, but there are also many that are looking to work as employees. And the truth of the matter is there isn't a lot of work out there for full-time interpreters. Let's take the case of the courts. There's only a certain amount of courts in each county, and these courts only hire a handful of interpreters, full-time interpreters. So for those that wish to become employees, it's very difficult. Some people want to find work because of different circumstances, whether because they want, health insurance coverage, because they have a sick child or an elderly parent or things of that sort, or basically they want to be employees because they want benefits. And some of them are very close to retirement, and they want their house insurance, paid holidays, and maternity leave and workers' compensation. And as things were, this was very difficult. Another thing that really worries those who are in favor of this law is how quickly most of the big associations in the country entered into the controversy, being that they considered that these associations, such as NAGIT or the ATA, should be more supportive of educational activities and things of that sort, instead of siding with or supporting one sector of its membership, which they consider are the agency owners, instead of course, being more neutral and being mindful of both sides.
So there you have it. Now, for some of you that may be confused or that may be scared of what's going to happen with this law, I'm going to share an article with you. Many of you may have seen it. It's called the California's new gig economy law, which is all bark and no bite. This law has been in effect for a decade in Massachusetts, where it really hasn't caused much effect, or either it hasn't been enforced. We do have to take into consideration, though, that we are California, so California does tend to move things a little bit faster. Depending on what we do, we may cause a ripple effect on the rest of the states. Whether you're in favor or you're against, or you're on the fence, one thing that is important is that you must take action. We'll be glad to answer any of your questions. Write a comment, send us an email, and we'd be glad to help you. See you next time.